How to make a long knife lanyard. Now this video is rather long, so what I've done is I've broken it down into chapters so you can jump to whichever chapter that you're interested in. But the whole idea of this project is that I have made a knife lanyard. It's really long, this one. As you can see, I've got a lot of decorative line on my lanyard, and the idea of this lanyard is that it's got a button knot here at the top, and I can put it around my wrist if I want to, or I can attach it to my belt, and then I've got enough lanyard to reach in any direction that I want without getting all caught up and not having enough on my lanyard. So that's the lanyard that we're going to make. But for this video, what I've done is I've created a shorter version of it, which will consist of a diamond knot, a star knot, and a diamond knot that has been doubled. And in between that, we've got a 4-strand braid, and there's a 4-strand braid for the actual eye loop itself. And it's exactly the same as the black one, but much easier to see. And also one thing I will say as well is this one is black tarred line, and I love black tarred line mainly because nobody else is using it, and that's why I love it. So anyway, let's get on and let's make ourselves a long knife lanyard. Right, so as you can see, the cordage that I'm going to use to create my star knot button is laid out in front of me. The length of the cords that are going to be used for the star knot is 18 inches, and just up there you will see a metric conversion for that. And the other thing that you will notice is that I've already in the middle here tied the 3 strands off with a constrictor knot. And if you don't know how to use a constrictor knot or tie a constrictor knot, there'll be a link in the description. And the other thing that I've done is when I middle this rope, you'll notice that when I middle it, I have just tied off center the constrictor knot, because we're going to work from the constrictor knot that way round to create a very small loop in our cordage. Right, so as you can see, I've got my work this way up. Going up to the top and out of shot is the shortest ends from where I tied my constrictor knot, and going down this way is the longer ends. And what we're going to do now is we're going to tie a 3-strand plait that will actually form the loop for our star knot. So first thing we do is we separate our leads like this, and once we've done that, I'm going to start on the left hand side, and the left hand one will go over the middle one, and then the right hand one will go over the middle one. You'll see as we go along if you haven't done this before. So take the left hand one and pass it over the middle one. So the left hand one now becomes the middle one. We then take the right hand one and pass it over the middle. So that now becomes the middle one. We now take the left hand, pass it over the middle. I think you get it now. And as you're going along, dress it nice and tight, nice and smartly, so that it looks good. When it's decorative knot work, you really want stuff to look good. Now take the right hand one and pass it over the middle one. Take the left hand one, pass it over the middle one. And you will now see that at this just above my thumb there, we've got a nice plait starting to appear. And now that we've got this far, we just want to take it over again. Right hand over the middle, left hand over the middle. And what we're looking for, now we don't want to go overzealous with this and make it too big, this plait, but what we're looking for is that when we fold our plaits together, we have a small loop in the middle. So I'm just going to do one more. So I'm going to take the right hand one and pass it over the middle. And I think if I now hold that nice and tight, go up, dress it up nice and smartly, we should now have a nice plait formed at that point there. And then when I bring those two ends together, a nice small loop. You only want it big enough for 2 leads. to pass through. And you can see here now, I've got a small loop at that point there. So now that I've brought those two ends together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie them off with another constrictor knot, and then I'll come back to you and we'll tie the actual star knot. Right, so as you can see, I've brought the two ends of the 3-strand plait together. I've tied it off with another constrictor knot, and I've removed the previous constrictor knot as well. And you can see here now, I can just get the tip of my spike through that hole. And so now we get on and we actually tie the star knot itself. I'm holding the loop that we just created in between my thumb and my finger. And what we're going to do now is start making the points of our star knot. And what we're going to do first of all is I'm just going to grab this one here, and as I get hold of it, I'm now going to twist it between my thumb and my finger, and we now form a loop. And I'm just going to lock that loop off at that point there, and you can now see here it's coming out from the center over the top of itself, around underneath itself, and then being locked off by my thumb and finger at that point there. I then take the next lead to the left of that. So just sort your leads out, take the next one to the left of that, and I'm going to pass it up through that little loop that I created there. Bring it through, and then as I bring it through, twist the cordage and form a second loop next to that first loop. And it's a little bit unruly at times. Form that loop. We can now let go of that one because it's now locked in place. And we now hold this one in place between our thumb and our finger, and just gently tease it round. And we've now got our second loop at that point there. So there's loop 1 with the strand going through it. Loop 2 hasn't got a strand through it just yet. So what we do now is go to the one to the left of that, put that up through the middle of that loop, bring it round, then twist it, gently twist it round, and we're now forming our third loop at that point there. So I can let go of that one with my thumb and my finger, and then pass that lead down between my thumb and my finger just to lock that loop in place. And if you've got really hard laid cotton like I have, just give it a little twist to keep those loops in place. So now that I've done that, I go to the next one to the left hand side of that, and I pass that up through the loop and bring it through, twist it again to form another loop to the left of that, form your loop, and then get hold of that lead and hold it in place. And that loop's come slightly undone, and just twist it into place at that point there. And now what we do is we go to the next one along, which is this one here. We pass that up through that loop that we just created there. In fact, if I turn that round a little bit, you'll see it a little bit easier. So there's that last loop that I created. Hold it with my thumb and my finger at that point. Bring up that strand there, pass it through the loop to lock it off in position, and then twist it as you're going to form the next loop. And just gently tease it round. Can be awkward, and if you're finding this a little bit difficult to follow, I'll put a link in the description for a larger version of the star knot so you can see how it's being created. And now I've got my next loop created. I'm just going to lock that off. So pull it through, lock it off at that point there, and now take my next lead that's coming out, and I'm going to pass that up through that loop, twist it again to form another loop, and there it comes, it's coming through, and then finally you can see now here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I've got a 6th loop here that's trying to come undone, and to stop that coming undone, all we do is pass our final lead just up through that loop. So pass it up through that loop, and then that will lock that all in place. And then you can see now here, we can mess about with it and fiddle with it. And what we're doing now is just bringing up our loops a little bit closer, a little bit smaller, and just gently try and get yourself a fairly, doesn't have to be accurately symmetrical around here, but you're starting to see now here that we've got, as I hold this now, we've got all our loops are locked in place. We can fiddle around with it a bit and it won't fall apart, but you can see now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops, and all 6 loops have now got the leads coming through them, and that will take us on to the next step, cup of tea time. So the next thing we need to do is where the loops are, you've got the leads coming out, and what you're doing is you're getting hold of your first lead. I'm going to use this one for an example, and you're going to bring it over the next loop and then just tuck it in at that point there. I'm then going to take this one and pass it over the next loop and tuck it in at that point there. Take the next one over the loop and tuck it in. Take this one over the loop and tuck it in. Take this one over the loop and tuck it in. And then just sort your loops out, just spread them out a little bit. And then this final one is going to go over that loop. So over the loop to the right hand side, but it's going to go down in that gap at that point there. And so take it down in that gap between the loops, and you'll now see that we've now locked it off again at that point there, and you can now almost, we've cleared our snake's wedding as such, and you can now see that we're starting to see a star knot is starting to appear in our snake's wedding as such. So let's get on, cup of tea, and do the next bit. At the moment our star knot looks a little bit misshapen, but don't worry too much about that, because later on we're going to go around and tighten it all up. Now the next thing you'll notice is that each lead that's coming out here is actually over the top of the loop there. And so what we're going to do in this particular case is with this lead here is we're going to follow that loop round. So go over the top of that loop and then follow it round, and then you'll see it will come parallel to this one here, which then goes down into that loop there. And that's all we're going to do is go around, take it up so that it goes underneath itself at that point there, bring it round so it goes underneath, and as we pull it through, just allow that loop to form above the loop underneath, and then you'll see now where it has come through, it's now running parallel. This one is now parallel. If I just push that there, you'll see that it's parallel to that one, and we're following that one round now. So just move those out the way, and then this one goes down through that loop so that it follows it in a parallel manner at that point there. And there we have it. We've now put into place our second loop on our points of our star. Right, we now go to this one here, and this one here, it will follow round that one there. It this time goes underneath two, and where it comes out, you'll see there's a lead that's running. So it's coming under these two here. it's going to follow that one there and dive down through that loop. So just follow it round, form the loop above the previous loop, and then just move everything out the way, and then just follow that lead it's running parallel to and push it down through that loop. And there we have our second one has now been put in place. And just pull out a little bit of the slack, that's it. So now the next thing we do is we go to this one here. This one here goes under 2. So just take it under those 2 there. And you can now see it's parallel to that one there. And that one there, then take that one out of the way. That one there runs down through that loop. And that's where we're going to make this one go as well. So take it round, make sure it goes over the top of the loop, runs parallel to that one there, and then goes down through that loop. And then just gently pull it up, and gradually you'll see this thing starting to take some form of shape. And now we go to the next one, which is this one here. It follows the loop underneath round, goes underneath 2, so go round, underneath those 2 there, just pull that loop through so it goes above the one underneath, and don't let them cross over. You can see it's crossed there at that point, so I'm just going to bring it round, and now it's parallel to that one there. And that one there goes down through that loop, and that's where this one's going to go. So take it down through that loop, and pass it through. And then the next one, it's going to go round, underneath those 2, it's got to come up again, giving me grief. There it comes, it's coming up, so pull it through so the loop's there, don't let it cross. So one's above the other, and now it's got to follow that one down through that loop. Okay, and that's another one done, almost there. We now take our next one. Oh, I've got a crossing here. Just make sure there's no crossings. So now it will misshapen. Don't worry too much about that. If it misshapens a bit, just gently go around, pull the cord through, and now you can see here that one's crossed, so just make sure it's on top and goes round. Okay, so we now go to the next one, and this one now goes round underneath 2. It's parallel to another one there, so just gently tease it round, make sure it's on top of the loop that's underneath, that's it. And now this one will now dive down following that other loop, and there we have it, another one done. And I think we've now done all of them. So let's just gently go around, tighten it up, and if you find there's one missing, but I think I've done all 6 now, you can now see that as we gently tease it up, that star is starting to form here. And that's all we've got to do now, is go around and pull out a lot of that slack. You can see now here, that lower one, or that one should be underneath the other one. Don't let them cross over, and just gently pull out the slack. And just go around and gently tease it up, pulling out the slack as you go. and gradually, as we do this, the star knot itself will get smaller and smaller, and it will start to appear beautiful and symmetrical. So that's all I'm going to do now, is go round and take out all of the slack so that we end up with a nice round symmetrical star knot at this point here. But don't take out too much, because we've still got more to do. So you don't want to take all the slack out, but you want to start to neaten it up so that you can actually see it. It takes a lot of fiddling, but keep going, and gradually you'll see that star knot coming together, and it will start to look beautiful. So I'm just going to carry on, go round and get all the slack out of this. I've now taken a lot of the slack out of it, and you can now see here that we're getting a very pleasing star knot starting to appear at the top here. The thing is, yes, tighten it up, but not too tight, because we've still got another stage to go, or a couple of stages actually. And so the next thing I'm going to do is, now that it's fairly tight, no, it's not going to fall apart at all. What I can do now is take out this bit of constrictor knot, this horrible blue constrictor knot, and then we'll get on and tie the next phase. So I'll just cut that out and come back to you. I've cut out that blue constrictor, and my knot is not too tight. It's slightly firm, but as you push it, you can misshapen it. But we're going to tighten all that up a little bit later, because the next thing we want to do is now turn our star knot upside down. And what we're looking for is, you can see this lead here, this one here. What we need to do now is take this one parallel to it and then up through the middle of our star knot. Now I'm lucky enough to have a grip fid, so I'm going to take my grip fid, pass it down through the middle, and when I pass it down through the middle, whoops, I've missed a spot. Pass it down through the middle. At that point there, I'm going to take this one, get hold of it with my grip fid. Whoops, not gripping very well. Hold of it with my grip fid, pull it through, and you can now see that that one, we've got now two leads there, where it's now coming up through the middle. And all we do is go round and do that. So take the next one. So the next one there, I'm going to pass my grip fid up through the middle, take that lead down, it's not gripping again, silly name. And there we go. We've now got our next one is now in place. So you can see now I've got two in place, and what I'm going to go and do is just go round and do the rest of them, follow them parallel down and pull them through the middle. And there we are, I'm at my last one now, and so once again I'm going to put my grip fid up through the middle, pass it up through the middle. If you haven't got grip fids, some pliers or something like that to poke down the middle and bring it through, or even a lacing needle, and then you push your lacing needle through. So get my grip fid there, pull it down, grips it, and there we have it. We've now got ourselves a lovely pattern on the back where all the lines are parallel, and you can now see on the front here we've got our star knot with all the strands coming out through the middle. Now is the time to go round and tighten it up again. Take out a lot of this slack. It wants to be fairly firm, to the touch, but not too firm, because we've still got another step to go to finish off this star knot. So what I'm going to do now is all I'm going to do is go round and pull out all the excess all the way round. And so these leads in the middle will get a bit longer. The star knot itself will get a little bit smaller and everything will become much, much tighter. But like I said, not too tight. Little bit firmer than it is now. In your hand, you should now be holding a nice firm star knot. And the next thing we're going to do is at the top here is we're going to form a crown using these strands here. Just make sure they're evenly spaced out. They're not crossing before you start. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my first lead in front of me and pass it over the second lead. And what we're looking for is we need to keep that loop there as much as we can. Just remember where it is, your first loop. We then take the second strand and pass it over the third. And just hold that out the way. Take the third one, pass it over the fourth. Take the fourth, pass it over the fifth. Take the fifth and pass it over the sixth. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to pass this one through the first loop we've created. And if I just hold these out the way, the first loop that I created is this one here, which has hidden itself inside a little bit. So I'm just going to bring it out there, bring it out a bit, and now pass that lead down through that one. And there we have it. We should now have, as we just be gentle to start with, gently pull out the slack. And as you pull out the slack, you will then see a nice crown knot starting to appear at the top. And just go around each one in turn, pull out the slack. Sometimes it needs a bit more coaxing than another. And then gradually you can see now here that we've got a crown knot has started to form at the top. So what I'm going to do now is pull out all the slack of this crown knot until we've got it so that it's actually butting nice and hard against our star knot underneath. And now, as you can see, I've just got to take it up just that little bit more, but we've got ourselves a nice little crown knot has appeared at the top there. So I'm just going to take a little bit more out and then I'll come back to you on that one. My crown knot is nice and tight at the very top here. And the next thing we're going to do is each lead here, we're going to tuck down so it follows that lead on the right hand side of it. So each one in turn, what we're going to do is just fold it over and tuck it down. And once again, I'm lucky enough to have a grip fid, and all I'm going to do now is pass my grip fid up the middle. Doesn't matter which one we pull through first, it's all going to come taking in turns. And my grip fid is now passed through the middle. I'm going to take this one here, tuck it into my grip fid and pull it down. There we go, pull it down, and you'll see now where I've pulled it down, still a bit loose there, it's coming parallel to the one next to it. And that's all we're going to do, is go round and each one in turn. So we'll do the next one. So I'll pass my grip fid up through the middle again. Make sure it is the middle. So my grip fid up through the middle. I'm going to take this one now and pass it down through the middle. There we go. That has now loosely been taken down through the middle. And that's all I'm going to do now is go round and do the rest of them. Now that I've tucked all my leads down, we've got a nice crown has appeared, or a double, it looks like a double crown at the top here. We've got our star knot underneath. And now what we've got here is we've got all our scraggly ends are now coming through this point. What we want to do now is just go one after the other and cut out each of those strands. So I'm going to go in, pull it up a little bit over tight, and then snip it off with my tool. And that's all I'm going to do, is I'm going to go round and cut the rest off, and then we will end up with a nice little star knot button. I have now cut off the loose ends that came out the back of my star knot. You can see here the loop, the original loop is still there, and we've got ourselves a nice little star knot that's ready for adding to our lanyard. Before we do that, one thing you can do is, this is what I often do with work, is I use a finishing solution. And the finishing solution I use is a mixture of PVA glue and water, roughly 50-50. And what it does is it puts a nice protective coating on your work, makes it waterproof, makes it easier to clean and wash if that's what you want to do. So anyway, be gone with you now, my troublesome star knot. And we'll now get on to the next phase. Don't forget, don't lose it, because you will want it back. Next phase is making the actual lanyard itself. Right, so to tie this actual lanyard, the actual 4-strand weave itself, the first thing that I've done is I've cut myself two. You can see here, if we look at these here, I have got 1, 2, 3, 4 short lengths, and basically those short lengths are 16 inches long. And then what I've done is I have middled it at this point here. That's the easy bit, because you only need the short bits to actually tie the 4-strand weave, and all it's going to do is actually go round the star knot itself. The difficult piece about this one now is you will then have 4, or 2 in number but middles, so you'll end up with 4 long strands. And depending on how long you want your lanyard to be will depend on how long these strands will be. And what I've done is I've calculated roughly how much cordage I've used for an inch, or I'll do a centimetre conversion for you. And so if, say for example, you want a lanyard that's 25 inches long, I will put a conversion for you in the description so that you can actually calculate how much you will need to create a lanyard for your particular length. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to form the eye of our lanyard. And if I bring one that I've done previously, you can see here, or not so easy to see, but there is our star knot. And at that end there, you can see we've got a loop, and that loop has to fit, bit of an interference fit over the star knot so that it can be put around your waist or your belt or your arm. Okay, so let's get our old star knot and bring it front and center. And here he is. And what we need to do is, you can see I've middled my cordage at this point here, and then off center, this is where we're going to start our weave. Off center, I have lashed it all together, or seized it all together with a constrictor knot at that point there, and yet again in the description will be a link to the constrictor knot. And so what you're looking for is, you're looking for creating that 4-strand braid around our star knot, so that we can actually, when it becomes a loop, we can slide our star knot through, and that will then lock it in place at that point. So let's get on now and actually tie the loop of our lanyard. Right, so in front of me, I've laid out the cordage. Going off in that direction are the shorter ends of where we tied this off, and this is the longer side, and this is where we're going to start creating our braid for our loop. And to do this is very, very simple. All we do is separate the cords into two on each side, and basically we take the outermost one and pass it underneath 2. So take it underneath 2 and then bring it around over the top and then back to the left hand side. And don't forget, pull it up nice and tight, dress it smartly. And now that we've done that, we do now the same for the right hand side. On the right hand side, we're going to go underneath one, at that point there, underneath the second one, bring it up over and to the right hand side, and then just pull it up nice and tight, and you can now see that gradually a bit of a weave is starting to form at the top there. And do this once again. So this time with the left hand side, we're going to go underneath one, underneath the second one, but back over to the left hand side, dress it smartly, pull it up nice and tight. There we go. And now same again, but this time the right hand side. So we're going to go underneath one, underneath the second one, over the second one, and then just pull it up nice and tight at that point there, and just keep going. And what we're looking for is keep going until when you close this loop that you're creating off, your star knot will fit between that loop that you've created, a bit of a tight fit. Not over tight, but just tight enough so that it won't slip off when you're actually using your lanyard in action. So I'm going to go on and tie some more until I've formed the loop. Right, so as you can see, I've done a bit more weave along here, and the next thing I'm going to do is just one final check, fold it in half where I would seize it together, then get hold of our star knot, and then just make sure that our star knot will pass through when those two ends are seized together. So what I'm going to do now is just put a constrictor knot across those two parts there. Right, so there you have it. I've now used my constrictor knot to tie that into a loop, and just one final check, get your star knot and just make sure that you can pass your star knot through that loop that you've created there. And so the next thing we're going to do is get on and tie a nice little diamond knot at this point here to lock it all off in place, and then go ahead and tie the rest of our lanyard. Now that our loop has been seized together underneath these 4 strands here, what I've done is I've actually separated the 4 strands out so that we can now go ahead and tie our diamond knot. And the particular diamond knot we're going to use here is the crown and wool method. And to make this diamond knot, all I'm going to do is take the first set of strands nearest me, doesn't matter which ones you use, and all I'm going to do is pass the first set over the ones to the right of that. And you want to keep this, so you want to keep this loop here. Just remember where this loop is. Once I've done that, the next thing that I'm going to do is take the ones that have just been passed over and pass them over the ones to the right of that. Then these ones here, I'm going to pass them over my final set. And remember, this was our loop beforehand. And now this final set, what wants to happen now is pass through our original loop at that point there. So I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to feed the ends through. Bit tricky, trying to do it without getting in the way of the camera. So feed the ends through, and you can see here as well, I've actually taped them together just to make it a little bit easier so that one follows the other as we go through. And then just pull it through, and you'll now see that as I let go, they're all locked in place. And over the top here, just tighten up a little bit, you'll now see that over the top, I have created a crown knot at the top there. And we can now, if we want to, just get rid of some of that slack, but not all of it. Just bring it down a bit. It saves doing it later on. Pull out some of the slack, and gradually it will get smaller, and you can then go on and do the next phase, which will be to tie a wool knot underneath that. So we've got our crown loosely tied at the top, got rid of the excess, and now what we're going to do is just turn our work over. And so turn it over, and now that I've turned it over, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a wool knot underneath our crown. So the first thing I do is I get hold of my first set of strands and I'm going to pass them over my second set at that point. Now that I've done that, I get my second set of strands and I'm going to take them and pass them over the third set of strands. And if just pull it up, try not to get any crossings in the way. There we go, it's over the third set of strands. The third set, then go over the fourth set. And then the fourth set will finally go, so this set here will go over this one and down through that first loop that we created there. So I'm going to take it, get that out of the way, take it over and then down through that first loop, take it down, get the second one through and then just gently pull up on it, and then as we pull up on it, oh, my tape's getting stuck. As we pull up, you can now see that we've got a very rough diamond has started to appear. And what we want to do now is just go round and pull out any real excess. And then as we just pull it up, you will gradually see that the diamond itself is getting more pronounced at that position. And just go round and check any crossings. There's a crossing there, so I'll take that crossing out because it's harder to do when it's all tight than when it's loose. And you can now see here, I've got that nice diamond has appeared there. And so what I'm going to do now is just go round and get out a little bit more of the slack, and then I will come back to you on that. Right, so it's a little bit smaller, diamond's quite pronounced now. The next thing I'm going to do is that you'll notice that, right, let's just poke here. I've got a centerpiece here, and the next thing we're going to do is pass each of my pairs of strands up through the center. So I'm going to take this one here first, and I'm just going to pass the end up through the center. Little bit fiddly, and when it's hard laid cotton, it's even harder. Likes to spring about a bit, and then just gradually pull it through, get the second lead through as well. There we go, and we've pulled it through. And just make sure, you see I've got a crossing just there, so take that crossing out. There we go, we've passed our first set through. We then go round to the next one and we do exactly the same again. So we're going to go up through there, up through the middle, pull the excess through, there we go, and that's the second one done. Just gently go around, make sure it's keeping its shape. We now go on to the next set, which is this one here. So the next set, all we do is pass that up through the middle. And then we've now got our final ones to go through, which are these two here. And once again, take it up under those two there, and then up through the middle. And there we have it. Just now that you've got that, you can see the diamond is there, but the other thing you've got to do is you've got to check, make sure there's no crossings. There's a crossing there, and so all I'm going to do is just twist that crossing out, pull it up so the crossing disappears. There we have it. And now as we go round, as I just gently pull up on it, you will see now we've got that pleasing diamond has started to appear. There you go. And as I pull up gently, that diamond has now appeared. Now, we've got our diamond, but the problem is the diamond knot itself is too far above our seizing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this knot so that it travels down to the left. And to do that is very easy. If we actually push on it here, you'll see that where it comes from our constrictor knot, it goes up round there. And what we want to do is just push on it and pull out the excess. Push on it a bit, pull out the excess. And you'll gradually see that as we pull up on it and then pull up the excess through there, slowly but surely our knot, don't try and rush this, just go around gently, taking out all the slack, but you're taking out the slack from the left hand side and weaving it around the right hand side so it eventually comes out at the top there. And that's all I'm going to do now is just gently push up on it so that gradually as I pull up nice and tight, that my diamond knot will firm up nicely in my hand, but move at the same time to the left-hand side to where my constrictor is. And then when you get close to your constrictor knot, take it out and then let it sit above where your constrictor knot is. So I'm just going to now go round, feed it through and tighten up. So my diamond knot has appeared there nicely above or below our loop that we created earlier. I've taken out my seizing or constrictor knots that I had there holding it in place. It's now nice and tight, nice and firm, and our only thing to do now is just check to make sure that your star knot fits through snugly through that loop that we've created. And so that is now all in order. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is, let's see here. Now, if we separate our leads out again, what I'm going to do now is I am going to take off this masking tape here to separate our cords, and the shortest cords, remember this, the shortest cords, I am going to cut them out down flush with the top of our diamond and then just gently tuck them down into the diamond so that they're out of the way and can't be seen. And then we can get on to the next bit of our knot, which will be actually doing our 4-strand braid again along the length of our lanyard. Our diamond knot here is now complete, nice and tight, dress smartly as they say. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do the main body of our lanyard and just exactly the same as we did for our loop around the top here. We're just going to use a 4-strand braid. And so to do that, all I'm going to do is separate my leads out so that I've got 2 on one side and then 2 on the other side. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the left hand one. So take the furthest left one, take it underneath 2, underneath 1, underneath the second one, and then bring it over the top to the left hand side. And then just pull up nice and tightly so that weave starts to form directly underneath our diamond knot. Then we take the far right one, we pass it underneath 1, underneath the second one, and then back over the top to the right hand side. And you can gradually see here now that our weave is starting to form very nicely under our diamond knot. And what I'm going to do now is take the left hand one, pass it underneath 2, back over, and then to the left hand side. And then we've basically done one complete circuit using all of our strands. So what I'm going to do now is carry on, and I'm going to carry on and work my way down here. Now what you've got to remember is, if I bring my other lanyard into play here, you'll see here that we've got our knot at the top here with our loop, and then I've got my 4-strand weave coming down here, and then eventually we get to the star knot. And the whole idea is, whatever object you want to put your lanyard round, so say for example for me, I wanted it to go round my wrist. You can see here now I have woven enough from the top to there to actually go round my wrist. But this can also double up and go round my belt if I want to. If you want to go have one that goes round your waist, you're going to need a lot more cordage. But anyway, that's the whole idea. So as you are creating your 4-strand weave, just check to make sure that once you get to the point where you've got that long enough to wrap around the object you want, then stop, because then we're going to incorporate our star knot into this project. So I'm going to go ahead and do some more of this 4-strand weaving, and then I'll get back to you. As you can see here now, I've done some more of the braid. This is as far as I want to go in this particular project. But remember, just keep going until you form the loop the size you want to wrap around something. Another little tip is, when you're doing this section, you can always hang the top loop around a hook or something, and you can get far more tension on here to give yourself a nice even weave as you work your way down. You'll also notice that I've tied it off with a constrictor knot. You don't need to do that. I've just tied it off here now whilst I explain a couple of things to you. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually put the star knot on. Right, the next thing we've got to do is we've got to put our star knot, so bring the star knot in front and center, and if I lay it round this way, what we're going to do is, as we look at this, you want your eye nice and flat on the table, and then as we look at this, where the top 2 leads are, we're going to use the top 2 leads and pass these top 2 leads through our star knot. Now, if you find your star knots a little bit tight, just poke your spike through, open up the holes, and then get the 2 leads that you're going to pass through, pass one through, and then pass your second one through. Could be a bit tight. Pass your second one through, there it comes, and then just bring it round. And you'll now see that as I bring it up nice and hard against my constrictor knot that I formed there, I have now put my button in place. So when I fold this over, I can now lock my loop in place at that point. So once we've done that, so let's just take that off again. You don't need to do that step. So now that we've done that, all we need to do now is just go back and put some more 4-strand braiding in. So once again, just take the left hand one, pass it underneath 2, and then bring it over 1. And then take the right hand one, underneath 2, and bring it over 1. And you can go away and hang this on a hook, hang it on a hook or something like that, and then carry on doing your braid all the way down, exactly the same as we did up here. Now, we carry on to complete our lanyard, but what we've got to do before we've got our final step to come up here, we need enough, you need enough leads at the end here to form another diamond knot at the bottom, which will lock around our, in this particular case here, I've got a snap shackle it's locked around, and I'm just going to find myself a little carabiner or something to put on the end here. So I'm going to carry on now and go down there, and then we're going to add our carabiner, snap shackle or something like that onto the end. I've now done a little bit more. You can see here now, it's not very long length that I've done. Obviously yours will be much longer depending on how long you want your lanyard to be. But in this time, I have tied it off with a constrictor knot, and you will also need to tie this off with a constrictor knot, because the next bit's going to be a little bit of fiddling around when we attach our metal work to the end of our lanyard. So we have our lanyard. If I lay it out this way, you can see the full length of it. Obviously, yours will be much longer from your diamond knot to your star knot, and then from your star knot to the metal clip. And the metal clip we're going to use is this one here, just a simple metal clip, whereas on my other lanyard I have got myself a nice snap shackle, and to be honest, I use this all the time. I love a snap shackle. They just lock securely, and then just to release them, just pull and it's off, and then you can swap out tools, etc. Belay my last about the constrictor knot. We are going to fiddle about with this a little bit, so it may be advisable to actually have your constrictor knot in place here. So what we do now is we get hold of our metalwork, and in this particular case it's a green carabiner, and what I'm going to do now is just separate my leads out and just simply, for example, the 2 innermost ones will go up through like so, and then the 2 outer ones will just travel in the opposite direction. Take one down and then take the second one down. There you go, and then we can pull it up nice and flush at the bottom of our 4-strand weave. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is just in turn, I'm going to take each lead and pass it once through a point on our 4-strand braid at the top here. So I'm just going to basically take one of the inner ones, bring it up nice and tight to the top there, and then I'm going to punch a hole in one of the braids here, punch a hole, and then pull through my first lead, and then just pull it up nice and tight. Just check your constrictor knot, make sure that's not coming undone, and then go round and then take through another one. So take another one. Let's see, I want to take this one here, and I'm just going to pass it through another piece of my weave. And that's all I'm going to do now, is just go round and pull each one through in turn. Now that we've gone around our metal clip, we've woven it up, and so they're fairly evenly spaced around the top there. And the next thing that we want to do is you can now go ahead and take out your constrictor knot, because everything is now held in place where these are now locked in to the actual 4-strand weave itself. So I'm going to go and take my constrictor knot out, and then we'll come back to this. So I've got rid of the seizing. They're equidistant apart through the 4-strand weave, and so the next thing that we're going to do is tie the actual diamond knot itself. And I'm going to take this lead here, and we're going to first of all tie a crown knot at this point. So take the first one and pass it over the second one, and just remember, keep that loop there. Take the next one and pass it over the one to the right of it. We then take this one here, bring it around the back of our work, and pass it over our final loose strand. Then the final loose strand wants to go through that first loop that we created there, and then now we can let go. It will hold itself together, and we've now tied ourselves a nice little crown knot at this point here. And just pull up, get rid of all the slack out of it. Not too much, but a lot of it. Okay, and so now here we've got ourselves a crown knot has been tied at the top of our work. So the next thing we want to do is just turn it over and do exactly the same again. The crown knot that we've just tied is just resting on my thumb and my finger. And so what we're going to do now is just do the same again. And I'm going to take this far one and I'm going to pass it over the one next to it. And don't forget, keep that first loop. Then I'm taking this one, passing it over the one next to it. Then taking this one here, and then passing it over that one. And then finally, this lead here tucks down through that loop that we saved at the beginning. And then we can, once again, we can let go and pull out all the excess, not too tight. You don't want to deform it. Just pull out all of the excess, and then gradually, as we pull it out, you will then see we've got a little bit of a diamond starting to appear at this point. And there we have it. Then we will go on and do the next little bit. Right, so now what we're going to do is double this one. And so you can see this strand here is actually coming out over the top of this one here. And what we need to do is just open up a little bit of a gap at that point there, and take this one here and pass it underneath those two and parallel with the one that it was just passing over. And you see, as I pull it up now, you can see now it's running parallel to that one. And if I rotate this round a little bit now, you'll see that this lead here is right next to that one there. And so what we're going to do now is just bring that up, and then under that one there, runs parallel to that one. See, it's running parallel as I pull it through. And there we have it. That is another one done. Now, this lead here, it wants to run, it's slightly crossed over. It wants to go just over the top like so. That's it. So now it's got to run parallel to that one underneath and pass. So I'm going to push it through at that point there, and then bring it through. And then our final one, this is our final lead by the look of it. What I'm going to do is this one is going to follow. So it's coming over the top of this one here. It's going to follow round and go underneath those two there. So take them, just move that out of the way. Give yourself a bit of a gap. Put your spike through there. Bit of a gap. Pull it through. And then we've now got them all coming underneath. Okay, so, and you can see now, as I'm pulling up on this, that our diamond knot is appearing at the top section there, and it is also become a doubled diamond knot. And if we look back at the first one, the reason the first one is doubled was because we actually did this one in pairs, where this one here, we're only doing it with single strands. And so now that we've done that, what you want to do now is just go round and pull a lot of the slack out, not all of the slack, just a lot of it, and make sure there is no crossings. You can see I've got a crossing point here. So what I want to do is just get that one there and take that crossing out of it. So I'm going to go round now and just gently pull out a lot more of the slack, and then we'll come back and we'll do the final little bit for this diamond knot. Now that I've tightened up my diamond knot, you will see now it's doubled everywhere except this one here. So where our strand is coming here out this way, what we need to do now is follow that strand where it's run parallel to, and we need to follow that round and then come up through the middle. So what I'm going to do now is just take my grip fid, I'm going to pass it, let's see, down through the middle, if I can find my route through, down through the middle, there it is. And now what I do is I pick my lead up, put it into my grip fid. If you haven't got grip fids, some long nose pliers or something like that will do the trick. And you can now see that as I pull up here, that part of the diamond has formed. Just get my grip fid out of it. So that part of the diamond has formed, and we just go and do exactly the same again to the next one. So the next one, this is my next one here. It wants to follow that one round and then come up through the middle. So I'm just going to dive down through the middle like so, get hold of that lead and take it up, and there we have it. We've now doubled our second lead. In fact, when I look at that, it's crossed over slightly. So take the crossing out of it so that it looks nice and smart as it goes in there. There you go. That's our second one. And then, so that's what I'm going to do to the last two, and then they should all come out through the middle. As you can see, this is now nice and tight. When you push it with your fingers, everything should now be nice and tight. When you squeeze it, good resistance to all the knots that you've got on there. So the next thing that I've got to do is I've got to go in and just cut off the ends. And when you've then cut off the ends, what you can do then is just tuck them down into the knot. And then if you want to, just use that finishing solution again to make sure they don't stick their little heads out, and it also protects the knot and keeps the knot in place. So anyway, I'm going to go do that, and then we'll just do that final bit, and then I'll come back to you and let's have a quick chat about it. So as you can see, I've cut off my straggly ends at this point here. We now have a nice doubled diamond knot at this point here. We then have our star knot, the length of the lanyard itself, and the loop with a star knot at the end. And basically all that is that on this knife here, if we can just compare it, you can see now here I've got a snap shackle here and not the green shackle. I've then got a diamond knot at this point here, and then we have to take quite a bit through, because the whole idea of my lanyard is I want to be able to put it around my waist, or not around my waist, but around the belt on my waist, or I can put it onto my wrist, and I will have enough reach so that when I reach out with it, I'm not fighting against a lanyard as such. And this one again, even though it's made of black tar, but very difficult to see on camera, you can see now this has got a button as well. And so that loop can go around my wrist or on the belt of my trousers. And so this is just a mini version because it would be difficult to do it all on film for you. Sorry that this video was so long. But anyway, this is how to make a long knife lanyard.